Newsmaker Sunday with Fox 10's John Hook.
Thanks for joining us on Newsmaker Sunday. Pleased to have with us this week a guy who is getting his feet wet in Congress back in Washington, his first term. Tom O'Halloran, the Democrat from northern Arizona. Well, it's more than northern Arizona. Arizona's first congressional district runs all over the place. Geographically, one of the biggest congressional districts in the country, among the 10 largest. Runs pretty much all over Arizona except for Tucson and Phoenix. Good to see you.
Good morning, John. How are you doing?
I'm doing great.
It's bigger than the state of Pennsylvania.
There you go.
And so last week we spent, or 2 weeks ago, we were on our week off from Congress, and we spent one night in bed at home. The rest of the time was on the road.
You were on the road. That's the only way you can cover the district.
You have to, yeah.
What are your constituents telling you? You're into this now 3 months roughly. 2.5. What are they telling you right now about how they feel about the state of affairs in the country?
A lot of them have a lot of concerns, and I think they're entitled to have those concerns. A lot of them hope that things start to change, that we start to get more direction, some more ideas as far as concrete ideas as far as the direction healthcare is going, taxation, the budget process. There's a lot of deep concern out there amongst the public. You
were a Chicago cop. You ended up in the Arizona legislature when you moved out here in Arizona. You live in Sedona. Mm-hmm. So you spent years down there at the Senate and the House. You were a guy who was always kind of, I would say, right down the middle. And even the Republicans, you were a Republican for a time. They were unhappy with you because you weren't conservative enough. You became a Democrat. Are you still walking that tightrope in Washington?
I'm still the same person I always was. You know, there comes a point in life that you're not going to change. Your values are your values. They're the same values that you go out when you're on the campaign road and say to people, you know, here's who I am. And when you go to Washington or you go to Arizona State Legislature, you have to follow those values that you told your constituents.
That time in the legislature, how much did it help you prepare for what you're dealing with in Washington?
Well, you know, having never been involved in politics before that time, it's helped me a lot. I went into, as a freshman in the legislature, I went in thinking that it ran like a business and that we needed to work on that from that principle, and obviously it's not quite like a business. You should have efficiencies, you should be able to get along with people, you should work with people all the time. But in business you have a different timetable, and there's also a difference when the economy is going badly. Business does a few things differently than government has to do because of the unemployment issues and others.
Business is more nimble, usually. They can make decisions. I'm wondering, with what you just described, if Donald Trump, you believe, is on that same learning curve.
Well, I believe he is. Business has to make decisions. It's not like it has the ability to not, that it has to adapt. It really has to adapt, and quickly. I used to say on the campaign trail, you know, put an issue in the middle of a table, and in business, you look at that issue and you try to start to solve it. In government, it appears we throw a blanket over it and nip it at the edges, and then tell people that we're doing our job. And we're really not doing our job if all we want to do is take a piece here and a piece there. All we're doing is laying it off into the future. We
just had the president in a joint session of Congress the other night. A speech that was pretty well received. 70-some% of the American people felt it struck the right tone. I want to show a little bit of that, just kind of lay the groundwork, and then I'll get your take on whether you thought it struck the right tone. Take a look.
President Trump opened his speech by encouraging the nation to come together before launching into his agenda, which so far has the country and Congress divided.
I am here tonight to deliver a message of unity and strength, and it is a message deeply delivered from my heart.
Reaction coming in after President Donald Trump delivered his first major address to Congress. Republicans were largely pleased, citing the president's economic agenda, as well as his hard-nosed stance on immigration and his commitment to repeal and replace Obamacare.
Last night's speech was presidential, and I don't think anyone can dispute that. You don't have to agree with everything.
And for the most part, the Democrats didn't agree. From claims the administration's immigration enforcement is too harsh to tax cuts only favoring the rich, the biggest criticism of the night came from the president's calls to repeal the Affordable Care Act.
We have 20 million people who gained access to health care that didn't have it before. quality, affordable health care that keeps them well and healthy, shows me that he really has absolutely no idea what's really going on.
One point of unity from the night came when the president thanked fallen soldiers and their families, specifically the widow of fallen Navy SEAL William Ryan Owens.
Whatever our differences in this country, we all stand behind and are grateful from our hearts for all of those who serve.
The White House has also been working on a new executive order that would address the court's issues with his travel ban. The White House says they will wait until Friday to roll it out, while analysts say that's because the administration wants to continue on the positive response last night's speech is getting. In Washington, Lauren Blanchard, Fox News.
Congressman Tom O'Halloran, Democrat from Arizona's District 1, is our guest on Newsmaker Sunday. What did you make of the speech?
Well, it had its pluses and minuses. On the plus side, he talked about bipartisanship. He talked about trying to solve some of the issues that America faces. On the negative side, there were obviously some issues as far as building a wall versus securing the border in another way. But I think the most dramatic pieces were the Affordable Care Act and his statement before the speech that he thought it was more complex than he thought originally, and where we've gone since the speech is not the direction I feel we should have gone in as far as having discussions away from the eye of the public and less transparency. And of course, the moment that he mentioned the Ryan, the Special Forces soldier that died, that's always touching. If you don't have a tear in your eye, there's something wrong. And you know, and having his widow there was a touching moment.
About the Affordable Care Act, Democrats are frozen out of the process completely?
I don't think so. I think there's a lot of problems with their thought process, the Republican thought process right now. I think part of what his speech was about was saying to Democrats, I think I'm going to need you on some of these issues. Because there is a lot of division within the Republican House caucus and between the House and the Senate on how to deal and address these issues.
So you think you guys will be brought into it at some point? You'll have to.
Unless they find a way of bringing people with diverse ideas together, and right now that's not happening.
Are you hopeful, or have you even heard, has Donald Trump reached out to Democrats in a meaningful way so far? This was a common criticism of President Obama, that he really did not reach out across party lines. Do you feel that this president is showing a propensity to maybe do that, or no?
Well, I know that he's had discussions with leadership on the Democratic Party. That's a plus.
And what do they think of him?
Those decisions have not been fruitful, and I think they think that he's not willing to address some of the real concerns that some of the Democrats have. Let
me ask you about this scene. There were Democrats in white sitting, some of the women, members of Congress, sitting on their hands, not applauding. What did you make of this? How did you feel about this kind of stuff? What did you make of this?
Well, I don't think it sends a good message to the citizens of America or to our foreign countries that are out there. There's one thing to be able to, if you don't stand up and applaud, that's one issue. But if you know, they wanted to send a message about their concerns, rightful concerns, about where women are in health care and other issues.
Is that the place to do it?
It's a place to wear the white, and it's a place to, whether you sit down or applaud or not. I don't think it's a place to disrespect the room.
In District 1, it's roughly split evenly among Democrats and Republicans, right?
It's close. Yeah, there's a larger Democratic
but these are conservative Democrats, a lot of them, right?
A lot of them are, yeah.
So you are, now you're on Armed Services, you're on the Agriculture Committee. How does leadership feel about a guy like you who's kind of walking the line? Kyrsten Sinema's in the same boat. You're Democrats, but to represent your district, you've got to stay pretty centrist.
Well, there's about 60 other plus Democrats that are in the same boat as I am. We represent our districts first. And, you know, the party has a position. Some of the progressive arm of the party has some positions. But that's not necessarily what my district wants for them. And so that's who I represent first. I don't represent leadership. And leadership has to you know from my experience, the leadership isn't exactly going to tell me what to do.
Right. You were a guy who was a maverick in the Arizona House and Senate. I mean, you were a Republican, and your own Republican folks didn't think you were conservative enough.
Right, and I'm sure there might be some liberals that think I'm not liberal enough.
Do they ever bring up, hey, you know, you never even put Democrat on your campaign sign? You didn't. You never had a party designation on your campaign signs.
I didn't, because I have to, in the end, I have to work with everybody. And I believe a lot of this tension that's in our country is because we have two parties working against one another instead of 435 people in Congress working for the people of America.
Is that your biggest frustration you've felt since going to Washington?
I think my biggest frustration is I knew that was going to happen. I don't like the lack of transparency. I don't like the type of rules they have about how the bills are developed, and the lack of, you know, these bills are not germane. You have a bunch of different issues in bills, and that's just not how it should be. We should allow the American public to be able to understand the process.
Well, that's the Affordable Care Act. Tinkering with that, even Rand Paul, Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky, who's been on this program, he tried to find out what they're crafting in the bottom of the House, right? It was on the House side, I believe?
Yes.
It's in a room down there. Apparently, it's being worked on, and a lot of folks are out of the loop.
And
if he's out of the loop, you've got to really be out of the loop.
Well, you know, there's always talk everywhere. But you know, I think it's not good when the American people see that type of government that is not going to be transparent, and when you're dealing with an issue that's so serious to the quality of life and the lives of the American people.
I guess you could, maybe could you draw an analogy to a police operation? If you had a police operation that you needed to be successful, you don't lay it out ahead of time and let everybody look at it if you want to get it done. I'm sure these folks think if we put it all out there, it's going to be nitpicked to death to where we're right back to square one and we won't get anything. There's going to have to be some horse trading done in private.
There's a difference between having horse trading done in private and marking up a bill before the Congressional Budget Office puts a number on it. There's a difference between doing it in private and not having it go through the committee system before markup. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of issues here that are different. And when the police situation, you know, when you have a tactical situation, you work as a team. That's number one. You work as a team. You don't tell half your team, this is what we're doing, and the other half, this is what we might do. This is what we're doing. This is how we're going to accomplish the task, and we all should be trying to work together to accomplish that goal.
It appears for President Trump, the key things right now are border security, Obamacare, repealing it and replacing it, jobs, the economy, and tax reform. It seems to be.
Well, I think the jobs, as far as the infrastructure bill, that's being pushed off into the future. I have a big objection to that. We have to put the American worker and the American working families back to work. And these are good jobs that we can be providing. And now if we're doing 2018 on that bill, we don't see jobs being produced until 2019 or so or after. That's not good. The tax issue, we'll have to see, because again, this is going to be, we've cut for 6 consecutive years because of the Budget Act. And as those cuts have occurred, all these services, including the Defense Department, has been cut and cut and cut. And I think that we, as elected representatives of people, have to be much more honest with them and let them know exactly where we stand on these issues. I didn't agree with the Budget Act when it was put in place because I thought it was a coward's way out of dealing with the real issues.
You're talking about running up against sequester and then doing it in an emergency forum.
Exactly, because they couldn't get together. How
come, Congressman, no one is talking about the budget deficit? This is the 300-pound gorilla in the room, and nobody is talking about it. We're $20 trillion in debt in this country.
There'll be a discussion about it. I'm sure of that. Why it's not discussed this late into the we're 2 months into the.
I mean, Paul Ryan cut his teeth on this issue.
Mm-hmm. Because right now, what the president is talking about has significant increases to the deficit.
Right.
So politically, that's very hard for he and the Republican Party to be discussing until they get the a clear idea of what direction they're going in.
One quick thing. You just got elected. We'll take a break after this. You just got elected, and I always hear this from all of you who come on this program. I'm already running for the next term. It's almost impossible not to, right? You have to raise money and start thinking already ahead to 2018.
Yes, it's very sad. Our productivity should be towards working for the good of the American people, not for re-election, and yet the system is in place right now for funding of campaigns. You have to be out there competitively seeking money in order to run a multi-million-dollar race.
Is that a hassle?
It's something that I'm not good at it. I mean, I would much rather deal with public policy than
asking for money.
Than ask for money.
I'm with you on that.
I have a hard time asking my family for money.
I'm with you on that. All right, we're going to take a break. Congressman Tom O'Halloran, freshman congressman, and by the way, the oldest freshman in Congress right now at 71 years old. Experience over youth. We're back on Newsmaker Sunday in a minute. Congressman Tom O'Halloran, Democrat from District 1, a freshman at 71 years old, the oldest freshman in Congress. And we talked about that before you came on the program. The oldest, I guess, in history was somebody who was 78 years old.
Right, yeah. So I'm young compared to that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Tom O'Halloran served in the Arizona House of Representatives 2001 through 06, served in the Senate from 07 to 09, was a Chicago police officer 66 to 79, became a member of the Chicago Board of Trade, operating his own futures trading business, lives in Sedona, but you do have an apartment in Washington. You're not living in your office, which many do. Well, as we talked prior to the show, it's not my office. It's the office of the people of the United States in Congressional District 1. And, that's not the place for me to be sleeping. But 30% of congressmen live in their office. They do, and they probably have their reasons for it, whether they have families, and the travel is a lot, and bringing your wife out is on you. It's not on government. There's a lot of expense involved, but again, having an air mattress in my office is not the place for it. So, Pat, your wife, your lovely wife, you guys weren't going to shack up in the congressional office? No, no. She's sitting right over there. Let me ask you, there's so much has been made of this bubble that people are in Washington. Now that you've been back there for a few months, that's reality, isn't it? Well, if you let it become reality, it is. I mean, you get caught up in the amount of issues that you have to face, the world economy, the safety of the American people, the conflict around the world. It's kind of hard not to start to focus on that. It's part of your job. But that's why we get out into the district after being there for a while and get back in contact with reality for our citizens. So when you came back and started talking to folks, and let's roll, this would be a good time to roll tape number 5. We'll roll it just straight up, no package. There have been these angry town halls. You've had town halls. You have not experienced this. Democrats really haven't faced this. Republicans have. They have, yeah. Is there a disconnect with what you're hearing and feeling in Washington and what people out here are saying? Because we've got folks, polled who are saying it's time for these demonstrations to stop. They want a majority now of Americans are saying it's time to put an end to the demonstrations. Let's try to get together and get some things done. They're not happy about all of these kinds of scenes. I think it's all right to go to an event and ask questions and be emotional about those questions, but to disrupt an event to the point where other people, other Americans, don't have the right to also speak, that's not right. Is this stuff, you're looking at the pictures, is this stuff AstroTurf? Is it fake at these Republican town halls? Are these Republicans angry that the Republicans aren't conservative enough? Is it Democratic operatives? Is it organized opposition to try to make the Republicans look foolish? What's going on at these town halls? I think it's what goes on, whether it was during the election cycle or anything else. You have a lot of people that have a high level of passion, that read things on the internet, that band together,
You also have people that, as an individual, have a tremendous amount of passion and get caught up in it. But whatever it is, we have to be respectful to our fellow American citizens.
What is issue one for you back there? What is something, the one thing you want to try to get fixed?
Well, I want people to work together. That's always been my
good luck on that
my
one
role
in Washington.
Well, I mean, you have to work at it. You can't always just say, well, I hope it happens. That's what I do every day when I go there. I try to find a way to work with other people.
Would you say that you've identified and met folks on the other side of the aisle, Republicans, who you feel you could do work with, but then they get pulled by their own party leadership to say, no, 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 don't work with that guy and don't work on that issue? That they're always being pulled by leadership not to make a deal?
We all are. I mean, it's not just the Republican, it's a Democratic issue. But, you know, you have to overcome those things. You have to start to, at some point, you have to start to understand that it's not about you being led, first of all, being led by leadership. You should be led by the people of your district, and they're the ones you're responsible for, not leadership.
And everybody says the minute you go down that road, then your ascension up the ranks is really negated. Because leadership just, they'll say, oh, Halloran, he's doing his own thing. We're not going to put him in a leadership position.
There's plenty of people there that are similar to my position on a lot of things, that are, well, right now, ranking members of committees. They've been chairmen in the past. You know, you start to build your own reputation and the issues that you care about. And, you know, people always need one another's votes.
Is Washington dysfunctional?
I use that on the campaign trail a lot, and right now I think that that was an appropriate use of the word.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think a lot of Americans feel that way. We're going to take a break. Congressman Tom O'Halloran, freshman from District 1 in Arizona. It's a huge district. A lot of territory outside of Phoenix and Tucson, if you want to boil it down. It's a massive district. Congressman O'Halloran, some final thoughts on the state of things in Washington right after this. He is the congressman representing the 10th largest district in the United States Congressional District. Tom O'Halloran, newly minted congressman, elected in November. He's been on the job 2.5 months. Let me roll video of Jeff Sessions, our Attorney General. How troubled are you by this? Is it a tempest in a teapot? Is it not that big of a deal? Would you expect a guy like this, who's a former senator, was having conversations with Russian ambassadors, that it may be completely innocent? What's your take?
Well, if he had just said, I met with the ambassador and, you know, it was in the normal course of business. He chose not to say that. And at that point in time, all the information was coming out that there was a Russian issue with the Democratic Party and also trying to
the Republican Party. You're talking about the Trump people. The
Trump people, and playing around, but that the emails had been taken.
Oh, yes, that they had hacked
into the DNC. And so, you know, these are times when we as people have to make conscious decisions. Do we really want to talk to a Russian at that point in time? Mm-hmm. And if it were just him, that would be one thing. But it's him, it's Flynn, it's others whose names have come out. You know,
it's dogging them.
It deserves an investigation just so it clears the minds of the American people.
Let me ask you about Donald Trump. You listened to him the other night. He came off pretty reasonably on Monday night.
He did.
Was it Tuesday night? I'm forgetting now.
Yeah, I think all Americans are watching that and saying, boy, hopefully he's going to move forward, and that's who we're going to see as President of the United States.
Are you cheering for him to succeed?
Oh, if you don't cheer for your president to succeed, you have a problem.
But a lot of folks in your party, it seems that they are on a path to take this guy down.
I don't, you know, it's a path to get him to recognize that there's other people that belong into the debate. I don't know if it's about taking him down, but it is about, hey, we're here, we're part of this system, it's 3 branches of government, you have to listen to us.
Tom O'Halloran, great to see you, Congressman, and please come back. It's great to see you again.
Same here, John.
Okay, welcome back to Arizona, and we'll see you next week on Newsmaker Sunday. Thank you.